Imagine opening a website and searching for a human being, exactly the way you would search for a used phone. You enter a name. The screen returns a date of birth, an address, and a social security number. There is a price beside the record. You add money to your account. You select the identity. You download the information. No break-in is required. No victim receives an alert. The person has already been converted into inventory. For years, a hidden network of websites known as SSNDOB offered this exact experience to criminals. The initials described the product with brutal efficiency: social security number and date of birth. According to the United States Justice Department, the marketplace listed personal information belonging to approximately 24 million Americans, and it generated more than $19 million in revenue. But SSNDOB did not need to steal every identity itself. Its terrifying power came from organizing data that had already escaped from somewhere else. It turned scattered facts into a searchable catalog. It added payment systems. It added customer service. It made identity theft incredibly easy for the buyer at the very end of the chain. The website was strictly criminal, but the basic machinery behind its value was entirely familiar. Across the internet, legitimate companies also collect, combine, sort, and sell information about people. They are generally called data brokers. They build marketing segments. They verify identities. They measure risk. The two worlds are not the same. Data brokerage can be lawful. A criminal marketplace is not simply another marketing company. Yet both reveal the exact same economic truth. Information about a person becomes exponentially more valuable when it is assembled. This is the system that made identity theft scalable. A name by itself is weak. Thousands of people share it. An address is more specific, but addresses change. A date of birth narrows the field. A phone number can receive a code. An email can connect to dozens of accounts. But a social security number can unlock credit, tax, employment, and government systems. Combine enough fields, and the record begins to function like a master key. The key does not prove that the person holding it is the victim. It simply gives the holder enough correct answers to pass through automated systems. Systems that were designed when personal knowledge was treated as absolute evidence of identity. What is your birth date? What was your previous address? What are the last 4 digits of your social security number? For decades, institutions asked these questions because strangers were unlikely to know the answers. Data markets completely destroyed that assumption, because today, the answers can simply be purchased. Much of this activity takes place entirely in the open. Public records serve legitimate purposes. Businesses use data to prevent fraud. Journalists and investigators use search services for lawful reasons. The danger appears when access, verification, and downstream use fail. A criminal does not care whether a fact began in a legal database, a stolen database, a public filing, a phishing message, or an insider's spreadsheet. He only cares whether the fact is accurate and whether it helps impersonate the victim. Data from completely different origins can be combined until the gaps in one source are perfectly filled by another. This is why identity theft is rarely the story of one spectacular cinematic breach. It is an assembly line. One company collects an address. A public record supplies a property transaction. A breached account exposes an email and password. A phishing page captures a phone number. Malware steals a browser session. Finally, a criminal vendor joins the pieces together and advertises a full Z, underground slang for a sufficiently complete identity package. The finished product may contain facts that were never even stored together in the original source. SSNDOB sat near the retail end of this dark economy, Its administrators aggressively advertised on criminal forums. They provided customer support. They watched cryptocurrency deposits arrive in marketplace accounts. The scale is the true reveal. 24 million listed identities were not 24 million dramatic hacking scenes. They were just rows in a database. And those rows produced $19 million. To understand why this marketplace mattered, follow a hypothetical buyer. He may begin with a target category rather than a specific person. Perhaps he wants victims with strong credit, a certain age, or an address in a particular state. He purchases records. He tests them. Some are outdated. Some contain errors. Others are a perfect match. He may use one identity to apply for a massive credit account, redirect a tax refund, open a utility service, obtain medical care, or create a synthetic identity that violently mixes real and invented information. The exact fraud varies, but the first task is always the same. Convince a machine that the attacker is someone else. That process requires more than just data. It requires infrastructure. Criminal forums allow sellers to advertise. Reviews help buyers judge quality. Escrow reduces the fear of being scammed by other criminals. Search filters reduce the time needed to find a victim. Customer support resolves failed deposits. Cryptocurrency moves value without a bank terminating the account. Every single feature removes friction. Friction is one of society's most invisible defenses. When fraud requires personal research, technical skill, trusted contacts, and weeks of preparation, very few people can perform it. A marketplace packages those difficulties into a sleek retail service. The customer no longer needs to understand how the information was collected. He only needs to know how to use it. SSN DIOB's administrators used aliases completely separate from their real identities. They placed servers in foreign countries. They strictly required digital payments. This was not random complexity. It was a deliberate attempt to scatter the storefront, the operators, and the money across multiple legal jurisdictions. The market could reach American victims while its technical components existed offshore. A buyer could access it from another country. A server could move. A domain could redirect to a replacement. And the data itself could be copied at almost zero cost. This is why personal information behaves so differently from physical contraband. If police seize a warehouse of counterfeit passports, those specific documents are removed from circulation. If they seize a server containing identity records, copies may already exist on a buyer's computer, on another vendor's database, on a hidden backup. A seizure can stop a service. It can disrupt trust, but it cannot make every copied fact secret again. On June 7, 2022, authorities seized 4 domains associated with SSN DIOB. The operation involved massive cooperation among the United States, Latvia, and Cyprus. Visitors no longer reached the marketplace. They reached a federal seizure notice. The takedown mattered. It removed a long-running storefront, interrupted access, and deprived administrators of their trusted brand. But it did not reverse the data supply chain. A social security number generally remains attached to one person for life. A date of birth cannot be changed. Old addresses remain permanently useful for security questions. Victims, therefore, experience a strange, haunting kind of crime. The original theft may occur silently, years before the first visible fraud. A company announces a breach. The victim changes a password and assumes the danger has passed. Years later, that stolen record is combined with newer information and sold to a different criminal for a completely different purpose. The crime has no clean ending because the product never expires. This persistence fundamentally changes the meaning of privacy. People often imagine privacy as control over a single secret. Hide your password. Protect your social security number. Hide your home address. In reality, risk emerges from the relationships between facts. An address may be public. A birthday appears on social media. A relative's name is found in an obituary. A phone number is sold for marketing. None of these facts alone permits an account takeover. But together, they can answer verification questions. They can make a phishing call terrifyingly convincing. They can help a criminal manipulate a customer support agent. The assembled profile is infinitely more dangerous than the sum of its parts. Data brokers operate inside this exact logic. Combination creates commercial value. A raw list of device identifiers is difficult to understand. Connect those identifiers to locations and purchases, and the list becomes a powerful targeting tool. The criminal market takes that capability and simply removes the lawful boundary. It offers the record to buyers whose only purpose is impersonation. It treats the victim not as a customer, not even as a user. It treats the victim as the product being delivered. This completely reverses the normal relationship between identity and ownership. The victim owns the life, but doesn't control the file. The broker controls the file, but did not create the life. The buyer acquires the file and uses it to act as though he owns the identity. The victim discovers this only when a massive bill arrives. A tax return is rejected. A bank account is frozen. Recovery then requires the real person to desperately prove that they are real. They must contact institutions, dispute transactions, freeze credit, replace documents. The criminal only needed enough data to pass an automated check in 3 seconds. The victim may need months of agonizing paperwork to undo the result. That brutal asymmetry is the business model's hidden subsidy. SSN-DOB earned revenue when a record was sold. The marketplace did not pay the cost of restoring the victim's credit, time, or emotional security. Those costs were violently pushed outward, onto individuals and businesses. At $19 million in reported sales, the platform's revenue was measurable. The total downstream damage created by all buyers using all records is impossible to calculate. This marketplace reveals exactly why remove my data is an incomplete defense. Opting out of lawful people search sites reduces exposure. Freezing credit blocks some fraud. Strong passwords protect online accounts. But none of these steps can recall information already copied into criminal collections. Defense must therefore assume that some personal facts are already permanently available. Institutions must stop treating static knowledge as strong authentication. A birth date is an attribute. It is not a password. A social security number is an identifier. It is not proof that the speaker actually owns it. Consumers can reduce risk, but the problem cannot be solved by telling millions of people to become perfect secret keepers. They do not see every broker. They do not control every public record. They do not choose every company that stores their information. The system is vastly larger than the individual. That is why SSN-DOB was far more than just a dark website. It was a retail interface for a terrifying global transformation. Personal information had become liquid. Records could cross companies, databases, countries, and criminal forums. They could be copied without disappearing from the source. And they could be resold without the subject ever knowing. The marketplace made this invisible movement look incredibly simple. Search, select, pay, download. But that simplicity concealed another vital function: validation. Criminal data is not valuable merely because it exists. It is valuable when the buyer believes it is current. Old records and fabricated data create financial losses for fraudsters. A successful marketplace therefore has to behave exactly like a quality control system. Sellers cultivate reputations. Buyers report whether information works. Support staff resolve disputes. Prices communicate confidence. Freshness becomes a feature. In that environment, even unsuccessful fraud attempts improve the market. A buyer learns that an address is outdated and tells the seller. Another source supplies a newer phone number. A record is corrected, enriched, and offered again. The victim's identity becomes a product under continuous maintenance. This is how criminal markets convert uncertainty into a premium service. It also explains why a standard breach notification cannot precisely predict harm. A breached company may know which fields left its network, but it cannot know which fields an attacker already owns from somewhere else. A stolen email address may look low risk in isolation, but if it becomes the missing link between a phone number, a password, and a government identifier, its value fundamentally changes. Risk follows the combined data set, not the breach announcement. For law enforcement, a marketplace like SSNDOB creates both a massive target and an incredible intelligence opportunity. Centralization gives criminals convenience, but it also concentrates their infrastructure. Domains must resolve. Servers must answer. Administrators must accept deposits. Even when each component is perfectly separated across borders, the service depends on all of them continuing to work together. And investigators can target those dependencies. The 2022 operation did not require authorities to erase personal facts from the entire world. It aimed directly at the system that made those facts easy to find and buy. Seizing recognizable domains destroys the customer's path. Following cryptocurrency reveals relationships that aliases attempt to hide. This is the recurring fatal weakness of criminal platforms. They distribute risk, but they centralize trust. Buyers repeatedly returned to SSNDOB because the name represented inventory and reliability. Administrators could easily move machines, but they could not casually abandon the reputation attached to the marketplace. The brand that attracted customers also gave investigators a stable, massive object to attack. Still, disruption and prevention are very different tasks. Disruption removes a seller. Prevention reduces the production of sellable identities. That requires organizations to collect less information, retain it for less time, and design authentication that does not immediately collapse when static facts become public. It also requires honest language. Companies often describe personal information as anonymous or de-identified because obvious names have been removed. But records can almost always be reconnected to individuals when combined with other data sets. A location pattern can reveal a home. A household profile can reveal relatives. The identity always returns through combination. For the victim, none of these supply chain distinctions matter when the fraud finally arrives at their door. The application carries the victim's name. The debt appears on the victim's file. The recovery burden reaches the victim's door. An industry built on entirely invisible transfers produces consequences that are painfully personal and impossible to outsource. Behind each search result was a real person who never agreed to become merchandise. Behind the price tag was a chain of collection and resale that the buyer did not need to understand. And behind the clean, user-friendly interface was the possibility of a ruined credit file, a stolen refund, or an entire life taken over by a total stranger with the right answers. The administrators desperately tried to hide behind aliases, offshore servers, and cryptocurrency. International investigators responded by tearing down the exact domains and infrastructure that held the business together. The seizure permanently removed the storefront. But its deeper, chilling lesson remains. Identity theft became effortless when identity stopped being treated as a relationship between a person and an institution, and started being treated as a package of data fields. SSN Diab did not sell physical masks. It did not sell forged faces. It sold confidence. It sold just enough correct information to make a lie pass as truth. The most dangerous product on the dark web was not one social security number, not one birthday, not one address. It was the assembled person.